Why I love the power of Kroll. Or, I swear I did not make this just to wind up another sci-fi guy. Honest. Um, Hello and welcome to this week's video and the latest addition to the Why I Love series. And this time around I'm choosing the season 16 story, The Power of Kroll. Now, I saw The Power of Kroll, I imagine it would have been 1989 or 1990. I basically had a fan friend that I'd made a year or two earlier who had lots of connections and lots of pirate copies of things. I basically had him take me the whole of the Key to Time season. I was a cheeky little bugger, but what can you do? I wanted to see this stuff. Now, I thoroughly enjoyed all the Key to Time season. At the time, like I said before, when I was first discovering Doctor Who, I pretty much liked all of it, really. There was maybe the odd exception that particularly stood out as being particularly good, or not, or wasn't too keen on that. But for the most part, it was all this just giant mush of goodness. And the Key to Time season was no different than that, and The Power of Kroll was no different to that. As the years progress and you rewatch things, the Key to Time season became something of a favourite of mine. Again, stuff like The Power of Kroll was just kind of, yeah, it's good. As I began to pick favourites from that season, I was more kind of picking the likes of Ribos Operation, Androids of Tara, maybe even Stones of Blood. But that's not to say that I had disliked in any way the rest of the season. As the years have gone on and on and on and on and on, however, even the other stories in that season that I just initially thought were, yeah, that was pretty good, that was decent, I've actually continued to climb in my estimation. Pirate Planet, Armageddon Factor, and The Power of Kroll. The Power of Kroll has never had the greatest of reputations, and I didn't understand it back in the day, and I understand it even less these days, to be honest with you, because, yeah, I love The Power of Kroll. This is why the Key to Time season has kind of become my favourite season in the last few years, and actually kind of risen up a notch over season 17. Because every single story I think is great. I think every single story in the Key to Time season is great. I don't think there's a single, not a single bad one, but not even a single one that isn't terrific. And The Power of Kroll is no exception to this. I've never understood why it has a poor reputation. It's Robert Holmes, which basically guarantees a great script. It's an odd thing to criticize a story for not being up there with Talons of Weng Chiang or The Caves of Androzani when it's still better than like 99% of everything anybody else writes. And that's kind of how I feel about The Power of Kroll. It's a perfectly fine script. There's some great world building, there's some great characters, there's some great dialogue, all the things that you would expect from Robert Holmes. And if you're really if you really want to dig deep and talk about the worst Robert Holmes stories, I'd be more inclined to take a pointer and look at The Mysterious Planet than anything even remotely near The Power of Kroll. Again, The Power of Kroll often gets criticised for its effects, which is something else I've never understood. Because, some people may have been dubious about the idea to tell a story with the biggest monster ever seen in Doctor Who. I think they pull it off remarkably well. Considering the time, the budget, the fact there was no CGI back then and people actually had to use a bit of creativity and talent and skill instead, I think they pull it off great. I actually think the effects are quite remarkable. I'm sorry, I've never seen anything wrong with them. I imagine that when they do a Blu-ray release, they will probably smooth out some of the matte effects. But honestly, I only even noticed the fucking join like in the last 10 years when I got a bigger, like 40-inch TV. I could never see the fucking join in the 90s or the 2000s on a what was then a normal size television. It looked fine. Only on kind of like a bigger screen can you kind of see the join on the matte effects. And even then, it's not that terrible. I mean, it's not Terror of the Autons awful, is it? In terms of the effects, I mean. And I imagine they'll probably smooth that out on. I hope they don't. I hope they don't CGI it, because I really don't think it needs it. But that's just me. Again, and this is something else that just grinds my cheese. Some of fandom gets. So I get the feeling some of fandom looks down on the power of Kroll because one of the guest actors threw a paddy because his agent miscommunicated the role he was offered. Philip Maddox didn't like it because he thought he was being offered the villain, and he turned out he was a different character. And this is apparently a reason to look down on the power of Kroll. It's like you played the bad guy twice already, dude. 3 times if you count Crotons. Let somebody else have a fucking go, okay? And honestly, Neil McCarthy, who previously played a very different character in The Mind of Evil, is a terrific villain. I'm sorry. He's a genuinely unpleasant, psychotic piece of shit that you can't wait to see get eaten. Again, don't see the problem. And again, it's season 16, which means it's Tom, it's Lala. We don't get K9 for the obvious reason that it's a swamp. He'd sink. No, I said Lala, didn't I? Shoot me in the head. It's Mab, Tom and Matt. God, I'm obsessed with Lala Ward. It's Tom and it's Mary. And they're both wonderful. They're both wonderful. To me, this period, again, I've said it many times, but to me, this period is peak Tom. He's just so much fun, effortlessly magnetic, very funny while still having the appropriate gravitas to not turn everything into a fucking joke. Is our new Who doctors listening? Yeah, I just don't get why people don't like the power of Kroll. I've always liked it, and honestly, the last few times I've seen it, it's actually just kind of gone up and up and up and up in my estimation. Again, this is why the Key to Time season has actually. I've always loved the Key to Time season. It's always been kind of top 10, top 5. But the last couple of times I've seen it, yeah, I've actually, it's kind of my favorite season now. I don't think there's a single below average story. I don't think there's a single below very good story in season 16, and that applies just as much to the power of Kroll as it does anything else. I think it's great fun from start to finish, and that's why I love the power of Kroll.